So they moved literally to the other end of the state,
Okay.
to a small little town called Presidente Prudente. And literally, we were the only Chinese family growing up.
And how old were you during that time?
I was basically about 2 years old when they moved,
okay.
or 2 or 3. And then, so I grew up not knowing anything other than, yes, there's a few other kids that are Asian, but they're all Japanese. And all the farming, by the way, in Brazil, all Japanese.
You speak Portuguese?
I speak Portuguese, so falo português. Obrigado, yes. So I did that, and then in the late 60s, when I was, I don't know, about 8 or 9, my dad said, you know what, there might be another opportunity because, yeah, business is great in Brazil, but, you know, we shared the business with my dad's brother, my uncle. So it wasn't that great when you have a business, you know, divided into 2 families, right? And my uncle, I hate to say it, great guy, but he was always a thorn because he's the little guy, you know, little younger brother syndrome and all that. So my dad said, I'm going to be the bigger guy. I'm going to go venture. And luckily, he lands in California, right? So he's working with a couple of...
in California?
In Anaheim first, right?
Okay.
And somewhere in that conversation, my oldest brother, who's going to law school at the time, is dropping a coworker off on Balboa Island, which I have no idea how they ended up on Balboa Island from Anaheim.
Yeah.
And there's a business for sale on Main Street. And it's funny because it was a Mexican restaurant.
On Balboa Island?
On Balboa Island,
Okay.
Ola Mendes, right? So, they're still around in South County. There's still one, I think, in San Juan Capistrano.
So Norma's, where is it at in relation to Norma's?
No, it's on the first block on the left.
Oh, what?
Yeah. No,
Okay.
yeah. So anyway, so my brother sees it and like, oh my God, we could be the only one in Newport Beach. So, because again, Anaheim, there are 2 or 3, whatever, right? So they come down and they see it. They make an offer to buy the building for, I think back then in 1970 for like $100,000, right?
Oh
and,
my God.
And again, in relative terms, when you compare it to Brazilian currency, which is a cruzeiro back then, it was a lot of money. But we saved up, Chinese people, and we had friends. So we say, hey, let's borrow a little bit of family money and let's do this. So they open it.
Yeah.
And literally it was just like time warp again, where it went back to the beginning of our first restaurant, like 20, 30 years before. It was slow. All that was kind of like, and maybe my dad said, maybe we made a mistake. We should have maybe just stayed, where we were, like with the bigger Chinese restaurants and all that. Maybe Orange County isn't ready. And remember, in 1970, there were no Chinese families in Newport Beach.
I'm born in 78, so I'll take your word for it.
Yeah, literally, trust me, even in 78, right? So my parents, are like kind of struggling, but luckily we're still in Brazil. So what happens is there is an incident, I call it an event. So, and that's where the John Wayne theory comes in. One of John Wayne's literally publicists, but it was his wife's publicist, a lady named Gloria Zigner. She was the original publicist of Orange County. Okay. She had a client, Pilar Wayne, John Wayne's wife at the time.
Okay.
So she's like, hey, the restaurant is empty. Maybe I can host a birthday party here. And so she hosted a party for like maybe 20 people. And literally, when you see the picture from then, that's the only people in the whole restaurant because it was one long table. There's nobody else there. Because the restaurant was literally running at about 20% occupancy, right? And she asked Pilar, goes, hey, it'd be really awesome if your husband could stop by and wish my husband a happy birthday.
Yeah.
So he does. But the picture, there's 2 pictures taken that evening. A picture of my mom and my dad with, Gloria and her husband, and a picture of my dad with John Wayne.
Yeah.
That's the picture that gets blown up. John Wayne signs it and it goes up on the wall. And literally the rest is history.
Yeah.
The restaurant goes from 20% occupancy to an hour wait to get in.
Yeah.
And people are like, why everybody lining up? Because this is where John Wayne eats Chinese food. And everybody wanted to eat. And so my dad would literally come out once a night and sing Happy Birthday, which is, trust me, the song that he sings and still, sang, it's not a birthday song. It's an opera song. But my dad knows 2 songs, but my dad is really good at it. So it'd be like you coming and singing the national anthem or something like that, right?
Yeah.
So he comes out with a top chef on and sings Happy Birthday to a party of 10.
Yeah.
And in that moment, everybody felt famous by association because they're being serenaded by the same chef that serenaded John Wayne.
No, I get the connection.
And everybody goes, oh my God. the waiters get extra tip, and the place is jam-packed because the whole restaurant stops for that 2 minutes when my dad sings.
Yeah.
And then he goes back in the kitchen. And I'm like, this is crazy. So what he needed was, once the restaurant got busy, my dad said, hey, I need quote unquote free labor, child labor, right? So that's where the rest of us all came.
It's like the Donut King.
Yes, exactly. Everybody works.
Yeah.
So as a 13-year-old, whatever, we're like, mom and dad, we're all moving to America. And I'm like, why?
Yeah.
We have a great life in Brazil. Why are we going to America? Because, well, your dad needs help, blah, blah, blah. And we want the whole family to be together. So my oldest brother was already here going to law school. And the four of us younger, so my brother was already 14. I'm 13. And there's an 11 and a 5. So we all, pack our bags.
Are you speaking English by this time?
Zero.
Okay.
We speak Portuguese and a little bit of Chinese.
Okay.
So zero,
Okay.
right? So we get here and it's like culture shock. The first thing that I would love to share, because again, the language, you know how in Spanish there's the nova, but it never sold because if you put the accent on the wrong part, it's nova, which means the car doesn't go, right? So we get here and my dad's car is a Pinto, P-I-N-T-O.
Oh, I remember Pintos.
Right? In Portuguese, it means something completely different. It means a guy's genital.
Pinto.
No, with an N, but an N in Portuguese means, right?
Do you say it as Pinto? In Portuguese?
In Portuguese, yeah. So can you imagine? We're driving in your dad's, right? And I'm telling my parents at home, you're not going to believe this. We're driving in and they're like, what? That's what they call it.
Oh my gosh. So I never thought about it until you just said that.
Yeah. So that was the funniest thing ever because I'm like, this is hilarious. And he literally was like an orange little station wagon. And that's what we get picked up in at LAX.
Oh my gosh.
And then the whole thing starts. And I'm like getting acclimated. And I'm like, this is amazing. This turn of events changed literally the course of our family.
Yeah.
So the good thing about timing and I call it karma, right? I think about 4 or 5 years after we leave Brazil, right? They have a major devaluation in the currency, which means overnight you're worth 10 cents on the dollar.
Oh
if you're holding Brazilian currency. So all of our friends that were millionaires, next day got wiped out.
Is that why there was that boom of the favelas?
Whatever you want to call it. But the funny part is I'll tell you another story because I remember that incident. And when I was in college, I saw it happen in Mexico. And literally I took my entire fraternity the night that it happened. We bought 30-some cases of alcohol for our parties for 10 cents on the dollar before they got readjusted the next day. That's how it happens because the dollar stays, but the local currency gets literally wiped out.
Yeah.
So if you're holding local, you get wiped out. If you're holding hard, and you can exchange it as it happens, you will get 10 times what you're worth. So the people that had hard currency went up 10 times. The people that had local went down 90%.
So do you invest in crypto? I mean,
this is kind of the same thing.
Precursor to crypto.
Yeah. So anyway, we're here. I'm learning English, right? And I struggle through my whole thing because, that's a whole different story. But that's the theory that I always said. In my business, one day, I'm going to find me a John Wayne because celebrity sells. Right?
It's branding. It's lifestyle. It's culture.
Culture, right? Everybody wants to do what Michael Jordan or whoever it is right?
Yes, yeah.
Ultimately, so I thought when I opened Wahoo's one day, which trust me, it wasn't my idea, right? It was just my brothers and I were thinking.
What was the first one?
It was right there by Billabong, or Hurley is right now, on Finch Avenue.
Oh, it is?
Yeah, the Costa Mesa store is the original location.
That's the first one.
Yeah,
okay.
Because I went to high school at Estancia High School just down the street.
Okay.
Right? So I knew that route. Everybody went. That was the back way to go down to the beach because it was Newport Boulevard or you came down Superior.
That's right.
The back way.
Over by where the hospital's at now.
Yeah. So that was the back way. So everybody that lives in Costa Mesa, that's the back way.
Yeah.
Right. So that's what I remember. And so I go, hey, one day, if I have the opportunity. So college, all the fun stuff. My brother's getting ready to graduate and we're like, it'd be kind of cool to do this, our little deal together because I wasn't having much fun in corporate anyway. Right. And we said, but you can't get in the action sports industry because you know what it takes? You either have to be a former aspiring, a former pro.
It's an interesting world,
or you got to be best friends with one.
Yeah.
Because you got to have street cred. So if you were not on the cover of a magazine, If you weren't dropping in a pipeline,
I was a former pro motocrosser, not a good one.